Welcome to By Subject. I'm your host, Peter Stevenson, and my guest today is Kevin Jessop, Director of Marketing for Growth Operations at IMA Financial Group and current President of Mountain West Capital Network. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Well, I've known you through Mountain West for the last 5 years, but tell me a little bit about, where you come from, where you grew up, where you're from, what was your early life like?
I was actually born in Utah, was not raised here.
Okay.
Grew up in California, the Bay Area, San Jose, and then moved to the South.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have much of an accent, but all my younger brothers and sisters, deep Southern accent.
Where in the South did you move to?
Well, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay.
Rock Hill, South Carolina, and then Memphis, Tennessee for a long time.
Was it your family was moving for opportunity or?
My dad's job, yeah.
Moved you over?
He just followed the path of, wherever the company would take him.
Did you love the South?
Oh, you know what? When we first moved to the South, it was a hard transition coming from California.
Bay Area to the South, yeah.
Yeah, because we thought we had that California cockiness and thought everything was great there. 6 months later, we never wanted to leave.
Yeah.
It was just awesome.
So you moved first to Winston-Salem?
Yeah.
What did you love about it?
Everything. The people are just so nice. The climate's wonderful. I mean, the summers are nice and muggy. They're hot.
Yeah.
Certainly doesn't have quite that California weather, but just kind of like a little more laid-back attitude, and people seem to be more real. I don't know.
How old were you when you moved there?
Oh, I was 12 years old, I guess.
12. Okay, so you're just about to hit junior high, and you finished high school in the South?
I did.
And then where'd you go to college?
Brigham Young University.
Oh, BYU.
Yeah.
All right, go Cougs. Okay, so tell me a little bit about when you got to college, what did you want to go into? Did you have an idea what your future was?
My dad has been an accountant his whole life. I was CFO for a few different companies, and so I thought I'd follow accounting.
Yeah.
And so that's what I started out with, and just didn't love it. Went down, after that first year, I thought, you know what, this is not great. So we switched to marketing.
We?
Well, I say we, yeah. I mean, I guess it's just me, right?
At that point, it wasn't like a joint decision by you and a bunch of other people?
No.
Okay, so you switched to marketing. And why marketing? Did you have experience with it? Did you have a class that you liked?
Interestingly enough, there were a few classes that were really cool. One was with Mike Swenson, who still teaches at BYU. My daughter, Lizzie, had him there when she was going to school.
Oh, wow.
That was like his first or second year teaching at BYU.
Okay.
And
so you had this class by Mike Swenson and loved it. And what was the class?
It was just introduction to marketing, basically. It was just,
So what did you love about it?
The stories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, like the experiences that he had. He used to work for DEC, which is no longer around, and a bunch of other different companies. And the stories he would tell us about, the selling process. And he was a sales rep for most of these guys. He wasn't like a traditional marketing guy.
Yeah.
But he was teaching marketing at BYU. And, the stories of leading people through that customer journey, through that sales process, just really fascinating.
Okay, and so you switch after your first year to marketing. And was the ad lab at BYU at this point? Were you?
Oh
no,
this is a long time ago.
Yeah, you're early days. So what was that experience like at BYU? What was marketing at that time like?
It was really a business degree technically I graduated in business management with an emphasis in marketing.
Okay,
that's how they did it back then, and really that's what it was.
Right.
So you got a good solid business foundation, and you took like extra marketing classes to kind of learn that side of things.
Okay, and you loved it, graduated, loved marketing. First job out of college was where?
It was actually for a so while going to BYU, I started working at Soft Copy, which was part of WordPerfect.
Yeah. You're our second guest who has worked at Soft Copy.
Oh, is that kidding?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So started working there.
Okay.
Worked through WordPerfect, and then started working for the print division, which was subsequently spun off to R.R. Donnelly.
Right. And so you're doing marketing for soft copy.
No.
Oh, okay.
At that time, I was just an account manager.
Oh, just
No.
people.
It was, just managing accounts and that kind of thing. I did not go straight into marketing.
Oh, okay. And so you jumped into account management. Did you like it?
I liked it well enough. It was not what I wanted to do long term, but it was a good job, and the benefits were amazing. Our first two kids, I mean, like health insurance these days, super expensive.
Yeah.
Those first two kids were $5 babies.
Right. And
you paid a copay for that very first payment for that very first visit, and the rest was just totally paid for.
There's some policy discussions we go down here, but we're not going to. So do you ever call your kids $5 babies?
Oh yeah.
Okay, good. So you get spun out to another company. When did you first jump into marketing then again?
Okay, so I was with Donnelly as an account manager for a few years, and they were subsequently sold. The print division was sold to just some private investors. And then Donnelly started up a financial printing office in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
And they called and said, "Hey, we'd like you to, help Jeff Stemper start this new shop here in Salt Lake." And I really liked finance. Thought that was, super intriguing. And so I kind of had both sides of it there. Started out doing account management and then moved into sales.
And so what kind of stuff were you printing? So what is financial printing at this time?
Financial printing is kind of a weird animal. A printed product is the end result, but the services you're selling are really the management of that process from when the deal starts to, when you've got that, whether it's an IPO or a secondary offering or a 144A or whatever that is, whatever the goal there is, you've got this printed piece at the end, but it's all of the changes. I mean, this is early days of almost computing,
right?
Where they didn't have secure systems to, make all these changes to the documents, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Everything was a freaking manual process.
Yeah. What was your first computer?
My first computer?
What's your first computer you bought?
It was Leading Edge 486.
Oh, all right. Old school.
Oh, yeah.
Did you learn DOS?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, so I'm old enough that back in the days when WordPerfect was starting out, you'd access some of these features. You'd go to spell check, and it would prompt you to insert disk 7.
Right.
Floppy into the floppy drive.
I remember. My dad was a programmer during that same era, and I remember we had this old computer that he would taught us to run DOS on. I wish I could remember any of that stuff now, but it was. I was like a 6-year-old kid running DOS. It was awesome, and I miss it. I miss that level of intrigue into a system. I don't see that anymore.
It was those early days that kind of kept me on a keyboard centric path. For lots of years.
And so, so you're getting really deep into financial management. You're doing account managing, sales, and were you still down in Utah County, or did you move up to Salt Lake?
No, I've lived in Utah County my whole married life, basically.
Right. Okay. And so, but you're working up here, selling financial printing. What years was this?
Late 1990s.
Okay.
Early 2000s. So
during the
that dot-com bubble. Yeah.
So you had some fun times and some not fun times.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It was great. The dot-coms that were coming through were just, everything was new and exciting, and they were like great companies to chase. When we started out, Jeff Stemper was the main sales rep. And I was the account manager, and then I moved in and took over the sales role, and we hired some more folks. And then we had the bust.
When did you join Mountain West Capital Network?
1996 was the first time that I started, helping with the group.
And was that when you went to this Salt Lake?
I was working for Donnelly Financial at the time.
Okay.
So we we, Donnelly Financial, at the time printed that first,
The first deal flow book or
deal flow
whatever.
book.
Yeah.
Deal flow pamphlet is really
Right.
what it was.
Right. So that's okay. So interesting. Like, because that was around the time that Mountain West got started, was early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was it that drew you to Mountain West Capital Network? Was it you knew somebody there? Was it an opportunity you couldn't turn down?
Well, really, okay, so in those early days, working for Donnelly Financial, I mean, like every new company, every internet IPO, we were all chasing that. And because when I say we, all of the people that were involved in Mountain West, some of them were true deal makers, putting deals together and drafting documents, that kind of thing. Half of them were wannabe deal makers. They wanted to be in on that stuff.
Right.
And so together, we were all chasing the same companies, and so it kind of made sense.
Okay.
To kind of band together.
And you were a service provider of those deals, and so you needed to be around the people making those decisions.
We needed to know who the decision makers were, and gain a level of trust. Really.
Yeah. Okay. So you go through the .com bust. How long after that did you stay selling financial printing?
Well, okay. So Donnelly made, sadly, it was a good decision. They said, you know what, we have way less than half the business we used to.
Yeah.
Salt Lake's a great market, but we can service it from afar.
Right.
They shut down the office, even though we'd just begun, a 5-year lease on some beautiful space. And so they allowed me to continue working there as I, looked for another option. They had some options to move back to Chicago with the company, but that wasn't really attractive to me.
Right. Okay. And so where did you go next?
I was in that office working when I say working, looking for a job.
Yeah.
And Spence Hool, who was with Diversified Insurance, he was leading it then. He came in and, Spence and I would have lunch together from time to time because we were also chasing a lot of the same companies.
Yeah.
And we would just trade leads and, get intel. And he said, so how's business? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, it's not great for us personally here, but, he goes, well, have you ever thought of insurance? I said, absolutely not.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Nobody thinks when they're little that they're going to grow up to work in insurance. Nobody aspires to that.
No. One time I was talking to this guy who, he was an embalmer, or what are those people called? And I remember saying, did you want to do this when you were a kid? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, that was not the answer I expected.
That had to be a family connection is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, exactly. A mortician like his dad was it. And I was like, oh, man, I can't even imagine that. But yeah, the same sort of idea. Like no one grows up thinking like, oh, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so you didn't have any idea, but I know your story and you ended up at Diversified. So you went over with what role?
Initially, it was as a sales rep.
Okay.
And, it didn't work out because insurance is a fairly complicated animal.
Yeah.
And the pitch that we had really was we're smarter and more knowledgeable than everybody else.
Right.
And I certainly was not in those early days.
Right.
I mean, like all my contacts were with these pre-IPO companies and, recently public companies. And I personally had no idea how to, manage those insurance needs.
Yeah. And so you're selling, what kind of insurance were you selling at that time?
Property and casualty insurance for, tech companies.
Okay.
Diversified in the early days, we're still actually a relatively new company.
Yeah.
When I say relatively, I mean 30 years is, relatively new here in, in this valley. And so there were a lot of long-term insurance agents that were here, had established practices, and tech was the new thing. And,
right.
It was kind of an opening. And so we jumped in there. I say we being Diversified.
Right.
Jumped in there and were able to do a little bit of hand-holding. It was that customer service angle that we pitched and that we really honed quite well. I mean, there are a lot of unique needs that tech companies have and those emerging growth companies have. And we were able to, in those first couple of years, you may not be making any money, but hopefully as they grow, year 2, 3, 4, 5, after they become public,
right.
you can make some money there, and it's actually a great business.
What what were some of the skills that you learned as a marketing student that carried over and made you, at least somewhat successful in that, sales and management of accounts type of role?
You know, being attuned to the customer's needs.
Yeah.
Really figuring out who your customer is, what they need from you,
Yeah.
and meeting those needs.
Okay.
I mean, really, marketing. So you got like this, the marketing funnel.
Yeah.
We're all familiar with that.
Right.
You've got that awareness, the education. You've got, everybody puts different labels sometimes on,
Sure.
some of those layers, but the awareness, the ads, the social media outreach, that kind of stuff. That's all part of it, but really, it's when you start getting into the education and the areas where you're working with them and you're developing a level of trust because you have information that they need.
Yeah. And understanding that customer was a big part of your learning in school that helped you drive your business success, over the next, 10 years or so. And so you mentioned it didn't work out as sales at Diversified. So when did you make the jump into marketing?
Pretty quickly on.
Okay.
Year and a half in. It's
Okay.
like sales was not great. Sales, insurance sales has got to have the absolute worst sales cycle of any industry out there.
Yeah.
You've got like all these renewal dates, and every time you meet with the company, it's like, oh, well, we either just went through a renewal
Right.
or we're 9 months out.
Right. Right.
And so that was also confusing to me in the beginning because it just seemed that every company that you met with, all these contacts that you had of people that you knew well, that you were friends with,
Yeah.
it was never the right time, it seemed.
Right.
And understanding that cycle, actually, it's a disadvantage if you're a new person starting out in that industry, and it's a big advantage once you're entrenched,
Right.
once you've got a good client base, and
Yeah.
it's harder for them to leave you, partly because it's a tough cycle.
Right. Right. Yeah. I one of my good friends, we were hanging out over the weekend, and he sells insurance, same property, and he's like, I am ready to get out of it. He's like, I make enough money, but it's not a fun life. And I was like, all right, I get it.
Now I'd say it's actually a pretty good industry to be in.
Really?
Oh yeah, I'd highly recommend it to
Yeah.
lots of folks. Back in those early days, also we had the disadvantage of being small enough that there was no real training program.
Yeah.
It was kind of you were kind of on your own.
Right.
Didn't have a lot of help. Everybody said, "Oh yeah, you can come with me to appointments or this and that." But
Right.
now we've got an actually high quality,
Training.
organized
Yeah.
training program to bring people on and to help them through the system, to help them learn the ins and outs of insurance. It's not merely
Right.
being good enough to pass that insurance exam, which is a pretty low bar, but
Right.
Okay.
So you jump into marketing. What kind of stuff were you doing for marketing for insurance in those early years? Are you mostly just sales support? Are you out trying to find new leads for your sales team? What was that like in the early 2000s?
All of the above.
Yeah.
In a firm our size, we were probably 50-ish people back then, maybe 40.
Yeah.
You end up wearing a lot of hats.
Yeah.
So, because I was kind of technically oriented, I was also the head of IT, so to speak. You also end up, you just, all those things that you just know
Yeah.
a little bit more than everybody else,
Right.
you end up taking on those responsibilities also. So,
Right.
we were doing a lot. It was kind of sales support, but even more than sales support, it was, developing presentations and interesting content. I had to learn insurance.
Yeah.
When I say learn insurance, I mean like be able to produce content that was engaging and educational,
Right.
which is something that I really lacked. All those things that I needed to succeed as an early sales rep,
Yeah.
I had to develop or, over the years developed for the other reps that were there.
Right. You had to create that for them because you knew you wanted it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, okay, so at the time, Diversified was a pretty small player in the market. Was it located here in the state?
Yeah, Diversified has always been Diversified.
Utah centric.
It's been Utah centric, It actually started with a group of folks that were at Aon. Aon's one of those big, insurance brokers, massive valuations. We were not even, a rounding error in their book.
Okay.
We were that small.
Yeah.
And so when they decided, .com bubble also, when they decided to pull out of Salt Lake, Joe Henroyd and Spence Hool said, hey, we think we got a good thing here. Can we buy the book of business, from you, Aon?
Yeah.
And Aon was initially resistant, but thanks to a stroke of luck and a lack of non-compete for one of those early guys,
it worked.
It worked.
I love those lack of non-compete stays.
Oh, I know.
That would be a great podcast. I would listen to stories about people who didn't have a non-compete, who competed against their former company.
And they certainly tried to get him to sign a non-compete also when they realized that they didn't have that in place.
Right. Okay. So this middle of 2000s through, that was a wild couple of years in the marketing front. Everybody's starting to learn the online space. You're getting into buying on Google and social media. What was the B2B space like in marketing during those years? What were you doing? What were the tools you were utilizing as a B2B marketer?
In those early days, insurance has always been and still is to a large degree, relationship driven.
Right.
And so it very much was then. So, it's not just what you know, but who you know.
Right.
But once you get past that, hey, I know you, you trust me, you have to have some real substance behind you. You have to have those educational tools, whether it's a personal story that you're relating, or ideally, like a presentation that you can share with them and they can pass on to somebody else.
Right.
I mean, in a perfect world, you're meeting with that one decision maker, but frequently it's not just the controller, it's not just the CFO that you're working with, but it's a whole committee of folks. And so you may have sold, so to speak, or worked with a particular person who's on your side who says, hey, I think we want to move forward.
Yeah.
But you've got the CEO and others that, often a general counsel, that play a role in that decision as well.
Right. And looking at the bottom line, making sure that they can trust you. What was the competitive advantage you had at Diversified, in the late 2010s that you felt like you were able to close business and grow as Diversified?
Partly it was the space we played, and we had a higher level of technical expertise.
Okay.
To ensure software companies and these emerging growth companies. Most people, that don't have software companies don't understand the risks involved in, your software failing.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. Insurance is a contract between two parties that, outlines the risks and determines, specific coverages for specific instances. If you don't have that technical knowledge to be able to, make sure that the words are saying what they should be,
right,
then, you really can't be a good insurance broker. You can't be a good agent. You can't represent that client in the right way and make sure that they're covered. We're assuming, because as an independent insurance agent, we work with a lot of different companies.
Right.
Chubb, Travelers, all the big guys.
Sure.
And so we assume that whoever is working with that company is going to get the best price.
Right.
And that's not, we assume that that's the assumptive, but really what we can do is get you that best price with the proper coverage, with all of those extras, so to speak, that, if you're a less sophisticated insurance agent, you aren't even aware of.
Yeah, you don't know the risk specifically of a specific market or a specific type of software or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a client that is a baby product company, and they end up having to switch their insurance every year because they just keep getting dropped to every year. Don't want to cover them. So anyway, maybe I'll introduce you.
And also, executive risk, that's another area that we excel in. director and officer liability, that kind of thing.
Okay.
There are huge changes that every company goes through in both their exposure basis and, well, as a result, premiums when they move from a privately held company to a public company.
Right.
And there's really only a handful of people here in the state of Utah that do that well.
Can manage that.
And I think we're the best that, do it. But
right. And so, okay, so you had to learn all this stuff. You had to learn how to talk about what made you special. How did you learn about what Diversified was better at, and how did you develop the core competency to go out and share that message as, director of marketing for Diversified?
Spending a lot of time with the rest, spending a lot of time with these tech companies, and figuring out what their needs are in the specific coverage. Spence School is hugely beneficial to me and to actually every rep that he's worked with.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great communicator, and he welcomes you to sit in on any sales meeting that he has with any client anywhere.
And so you would go to sales meetings, you'd spend a lot of time, actually digging in and doing those interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of a time that you had an aha moment in one of those sales meetings that you're like, oh, I'm going to steal that and use it in some other stuff?
Oh, just about every meeting.
Really?
Some little nugget that is like, oh yeah, we're gonna write that down
and use it in all of our other spaces. Okay, and so tell me about Mountain West Capital Network in this era. Did you stay involved? In the meetings, we always joke that you're the longest. You and France are the longest running members. So, what was it like during that era? You definitely have a history and a background there. What was Mountain West Capital Network doing in that time? What were you doing as an officer with that group?
Back in those days, it was a great group of folks. David Ingerbauer, Scott Nixon. There were a lot of good folks. Brad Bertosh among them. They were all looking to grow the pie.
Yeah.
Not just get their piece of the pie, but to grow that pie.
What do you mean by pie? Grow the state of Utah pie?
The state of Utah pie. Grow the deals and the deal network and the companies, promote the right environment.
Right.
So that these companies could thrive and do well with all of their needs being met by Utah companies.
Right. Okay.
When I say Utah companies, it might be an out-of-state firm that has a local office, but
right.
In those early days, local folks did not have the expertise to handle a lot of those complex transactions.
Right.
So every IPO in 1999 was done by an outside law firm, it seemed.
Right. Okay. And there probably weren't that many of them either. That 99, how many IPOs in the state of Utah were there?
Oh, heck, I don't know. There were enough to keep people in business, but nothing like today's world.
Today.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the goal at that time was to develop the muscle memory to do the work that it took to do M&A and IPO and all of the other type of deal flow. And so why did you stay involved with it as an insurance marketing person?
So in my prior life with Donnelly Financial, we worked on a lot of IPOs, secondary offerings, that kind of thing. So I learned the language there. That's where we started, I started with Mountain West Capital Network in those days. Yeah. And so the deal flow from early on has been kind of near and dear to my heart, partly because that information was very critical to succeeding in what we were after.
Yeah.
Being able to track those deals and know who the players are and who the influencers are. And then once I moved to Diversified in those early days, once again, we were still tracking those same companies. Being able to speak the language with the CFOs and these centers of influence was hugely beneficial in gaining their trust and, being able to follow the deals and explain the specific coverages that they need, insurance coverages they need to handle the risks that they were, And
so were you bringing
really taking on
other Diversified employees and salespeople to the meetings and kind of dragging people there, or were you bringing the deals and the information back to your organization?
In those, it was sales and marketing were almost one and the same in those early years.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it was very much a team environment. When we needed to when we targeted a specific company, we all had our assignments, but it was a group effort. And that's
Right.
something that's actually something very cool and a little unique about Diversified, now IMA,
Right.
is it is very much a team environment.
Hmm.
Old school insurance agencies are very siloed, and
Right.
each individual producer,
Yeah.
looks after themselves with their own, their single account manager and account exec and that kind of thing.
Right.
Is very siloed. We've always been team players, and so everybody pitches in and helps on all accounts.
And so you got to be involved in a lot of that, and knew the people from your work with Mountain West Capital Network. You knew the other players in the organization, and so as more money started to get poured into the state, as the knowledge about how to do some of this M&A and IPO work, came here locally. What was the growth of Mountain West like in the 2010s through 2020s?
It's actually been steady growth all through
Yeah.
the years. We've been fortunate enough to lead the nation with a good economy and a lot of entrepreneurs. As I mentioned, in those early years, I worked for WordPerfect.
Right.
Worked for Novell technically for a time, just because Novell bought WordPerfect, right?
Yeah.
And those companies seeded so many new companies.
Yeah.
There was lots of business, and those new companies, as I mentioned, when they're little, they're not money makers for an insurance agency.
Right. Right.
But we were able to, work with them, hold their hands through that life cycle, through that growth cycle, and
Right.
get some real fans, raving fans, we like to call them,
Right.
that said, hey, every person that they would meet, when you help somebody through not just getting the right coverage, but when you help people through tough claims,
Right. Sure.
tenfold, and there's a lot of claim stories that we won't relate here, but
Right. Right.
when software fails and there are tens of millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in claims paid out,
Right.
you develop really strong relationships with those folks.
Right, because you get to be, you're essentially a third-party administrator, right? So you are the one dealing with understanding the insurance and making sure your clients get what they need, and
When in insurance, it's kind of, as a broker, you're kind of in a unique position because technically you represent the insurance carrier,
right,
but when there's a claim, you really have to be, your value is by being an advocate for the client.
right,
By making sure that not just the policy language is followed, because there are lots of opportunities because of the nuances of, insurance contracts,
yeah.
that kind of stuff, where insurance companies are technically able to decline coverage.
Sure,
But if you can successfully argue that the intent of the coverage, is this, then you can, we've moved the needle on some really big claims.
Oh, okay, and so that gets you to have raving fans and sell diversified. And so, what was Mountain West Capital Network like? What did deal flow look like? Early years was a pamphlet. Now it's a book that's a nightmare to put together. But
as you well know,
as I well know. But why that growth that you saw over the past 30 years? What has it been like to watch? Seeing you've been heavily involved in all deals in Utah for 30 years. Has it been a lot of fun to watch that growth?
Oh, it's been super cool. Yeah.
What is the reason that it's grown so much? From your opinion?
From my opinion?
Yeah.
Really, it's the entrepreneurial spirit of Utahns in general. We've got kind of a unique community here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-sufficiency, but it's a highly educated,
right,
demographic where self-sufficiency doesn't mean that you have to go, produce your own food and build your own, homes and that kind of thing. But you take the skills that because you've gone to college, because you've got, a computer science degree or whatever.
Yeah.
And you think, you know what? I can build a better mousetrap.
Right.
Happens to be a software mousetrap, right?
Right. So that spirit of entrepreneurship and the ability from those early wins, WordPerfect and some of those other, big exits, in the 90s and early 2000s, and that spread of money
when those early companies and when venture capital came in, they
Yeah.
seeded a lot of businesses
Right.
with money. I mean, you need money to start
And we're in like
the business.
third round of those, like for third generation of those exits now. And do you see this continuing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of people outside the state of Utah look to Utah kind of as a model to emulate.
Yeah.
Where once 100% of our deals were handled by external law firms, big law firms from Chicago and New York and the Bay Area,
Right.
as well as the money sources, primarily from the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. We've now got that full infrastructure here locally.
Yeah.
And they're sophisticated and they do well, and it's that virtuous cycle. It just builds on itself.
What let me ask the other side of the question. What do you think are the spaces that we still need more knowledge and infrastructure and education to make us even better?
We're a highly educated population, but we've still got challenges with our demographic growth rate.
Okay.
We have, relative to the amount of spending per pupil,
Yeah.
we do well. But,
Right.
partly we're kind of tapped out. I mean, we also spend the largest portion of our budget on education as a percentage compared to all the other states.
Right.
So even though the per pupil spending is low, as a percentage of our overall government, it's rather high.
Right. Yeah.
So we've got to kind of tread that fine line and provide better
Education.
opportunities for education, especially post-secondary education.
Post-secondary education.
Or once they've left high school.
Okay. So the secret for future growth is really that ability for post-secondary education, and more opportunities for people to go to some sort of secondary education.
Yeah.
College, trade school, whatever that is. Yeah. Are you involved in any of that type of thing? Do you help out with that, or are you just too busy with Mountain West?
Not as much as I'd like. I track it pretty closely. I mean, like, we've got some great universities. They're doing really good things.
Yeah.
I've got 2 boys that are at Utah State. I've had 2 girls graduate from BYU.
Yeah.
My boys right now are up there just having a really good experience. When I say good experience, I mean a great educational experience. And, quite frankly, I think it's probably the best college campus experience here in the state of Utah.
Yeah.
UVU is growing just leaps and bounds. I mean,
no one wants to live on that campus, though.
They're now the biggest university in Utah.
Right.
And, they're still trying to find their way in a lot of ways, though.
Yeah. I love the Utah State campus. It is a phenomenal area. If it wasn't so cold, I'd go there more often.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I'm really excited about what Utah Tech is doing down in St. George. I think that rebrand and kind of their repositioning themselves as, a tech university is exciting. And I see some great stuff coming out of that space.
Super exciting. That's something that they really needed.
Yeah.
They needed to get away from that party school kind of moniker.
Yeah.
And really focus on education. I think they're doing a much better job these days.
Okay. Couple of things. This will come out right before the deal flow. So tell us, do you know the day of the deal flow?
The day of the deal flow is at May 15th.
May 15th. That's right. Where is it going to be at?
It's going to be at the Grand America.
No.
Oh, hold on. What am I saying?
What are you doing?
Ken Garff. No, it's going to be at the Ken Garff building. We're going to have to edit that part.
Yeah, that's all right. Where do you get tickets? Mountain West Capital Network.
Mountain West, MWCN.org.
Yep. One of the things I want to say this about MWCN as an organization, the ability to be welcomed into a community is better in that group of people than almost any other organization I've been a part of. They are, as an organization, it is welcome and friendly and caring, and everybody is. The way I describe it to some people is it's the British Bake Off show, but in business. Like, everybody's cheering each other on to make the world better. And so I do really, really think that more people should get involved, come to more of the events, and find a way to be networked with that group.
No, I absolutely agree. In fact, something that I haven't really touched on, but centers of influence have been key to our success at Diversified
Yeah.
and now IMA.
Yeah.
I mean, we're encouraged to, when I say we, like all of the employees, all the associates are encouraged to participate in these organizations,
Right.
but really to participate them in a way that they can be truly useful both to the organization and to get that back. I mean, like, we don't want to just write a check and sponsor something. We want to be a part of it. We want to, get in the trenches and do the work, be where we can make an influence or be influential. I happen to be the president of Mountain West now. I've been with this organization a long time. Kevin Heyer, another member of our firm, is current president of ACG Utah.
They're taking over the service provider networks.
In a lot of ways, and so the goal there is really to provide value to those organizations, develop contacts. So once you've got that trust, that level of trust, really, it may not be imminent, but at some point we're going, everybody's going to be our client, right?
Right. Okay. So we always end with two questions. First one is give some advice to young up and coming marketers. What would you suggest what is some advice for, somebody getting into the B2B marketing space? Service provider, B2B service provider marketing
service
space.
provider marketing.
Because that's what you are. You're a service provider.
No, very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, our goal at IMA Salt Lake City is really not to be the best insurance agent, insurance broker out there, because that's a really low bar.
Right.
But to be the best service provider for every client that we have.
Okay.
We want to be, that trusted partner, just as their, Big Four accounting firm is, or their attorneys, or any of those guys.
Okay.
That's where we like to think of ourselves, though we're not always,
Okay. So then what's the advice for someone
But the advice
that?
for somebody that's in that insurance provider space is really get in, get your hands dirty, network as much as you can.
Okay.
And when I say network as much as you can, I mean, not only are there great opportunities within the service provider community, there's tons of good companies out there that, you could jump to. And when you're in a marketing position or you're working with a service provider, you have so many clients and you're exposed to so many different companies. You know who the good ones are.
Right.
I mean, you really get,
It's
a
really
good
true.
feel for where the next jump might be.
I've been working selling branding services for 6 years now, and I've wanted to jump to so many of them because you just fall in
Great
love with
companies.
companies, right? They're unbelievable, and it's fun to see the inside of a company. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so last question: give us some. Where are some places that people should go eat in the greater Utah area?
Oh goodness!
If you were going to you're going to go on a date night, where's you going? Where's date night level great? Well,
see, it all depends on what you're after, I guess. I must admit, date night for me is often, something that's comfortable, that's casual, that is good. I like a lot of the savory restaurants.
Okay. All the savory groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Via 313. I like R&R Barbecue.
Okay.
A lot of those, fast casual places.
All right.
On the higher end, there's still no place like Sundance, the grill room.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh yeah. I am super excited about the Tree Room's new menu up there.
And Park City is just so full of so many good options.
Yeah.
And Salt Lake as well.
Right. When you're downtown, you go to lunch with some people downtown. Where are you going?
Oh goodness. See, downtown, we're creatures of habit. We've got great options. We work right across the street from City Creek. And so, Bocata, Red Iguana,
right.
Right there, just so good to go to, even if it's almost every day.
I have to say, I'm a little sad that you didn't mention the best fries in Salt Lake City right next to your offices at Harmon's.
Oh my gosh, they are so good.
They're the best fries
I know.
in the state.
They're fried in that wonderful beef tallow.
I know. It's
I
so
know.
good.
And the hamburgers, you would never expect burgers that good out of a grocery store.
They're so good. It's my number one most underrated place to go.
Yeah.
And
My brother-in-law not too long ago said, "Hey, I've got an opportunity to, take a bunch of young men on a very quick, hamburger run in Salt Lake City
right.
before I drop them off at the airport."
Yeah.
And that was one of the places I gave him. It's like B&D burger, there's hires, but really, if you want a really good burger and you're not too keyed in on ambiance,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that Harmon's burger is so good.
Yeah, those fries.
And the fries are amazing.
I would be lying if I said that I don't go there regularly and just order the fries at like 3:00 on a Tuesday when I need a better emotional state.
They are
you.
So good.
They're the best. Thank you so much, Kevin. I'll see you at the Mountain West Capital Network stuff. And thanks for all you do for this great state.
Absolutely. Thanks a ton, Peter.
Yep. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of By Subject Podcast. If you have any guest recommendations or other comments, you can send them to us at info@bysubjectpodcast.com. By Subject Podcast is a production of Modern 8, an agency in partnership with Silicon Slopes and Mountain West Capital Network. Audio production by Dave Meekum. Video production by Connor Mitchell. And the music by the insanely talented Josh Johnston. If you need any place to eat, or if you need any of our old interviews, you can find that all on our website at bysubjectpodcast.com.